You know, yesterday after the news of Matthew Perry dying because of excessive use of ketamine, it really, I don't want to say shocked me, because in a way I was expecting this death perhaps to be an accident, a freak accident. Sadly, we have seen this already a few times in the last decade or so. If I remember correctly, Prince, the artist, once he was also going by that name for a period, he also died, if I remember correctly, in his own house, and seemed the culprit was medications, anti-pain medications, maybe a combination of such. Same thing with Michael Jackson as well. Medications, excessive medications, combination of different things that the heart gave out. In this case, I was reading about ketamine that basically it's also used recreationally, and it's also used for anesthetics, anesthesia. I think in his blood there was 3,000 parts for whatever amount of blood, and either way, like between 1,000 parts for milliliter of blood or something like that to 6,000 parts. It's actually normal anesthesia, or so. If I understand that correctly, to have 3,000 parts is it's actually knocking you out pretty significantly, and perhaps combined with the bathtub and something else, I don't know exactly, but they say that the bathtub is also not very good for high blood pressure. But what I find strange is that obviously the two things that go really together, high blood pressure and then falling asleep or losing consciousness. But of course, if you have sedated yourself to that extent and you pass out, right? You relax, you pass out, you're not in control, and you drown accidentally. Wow. I mean, in this way, it is shocking because you think if just somebody was there looking over this guy, but obviously there's going to be always a moment where somebody's alone. And to think that something, an accident like that could have been prevented, obviously. But above that, you start to wonder also, becomes also a human condition type of analysis here, right? You have an incredibly talented, wealthy, successful man that has meant so much for people around the world with his role in Friends. A guy that was making probably at that time around 10, 15, 20 million a year just by reruns alone, just by royalties, by backhand, whatever they're called, like, contractual things which allows them to profit from reruns around the world. And we know that Friends made a gazillion ton of money and still does make a ton of money, and every time it's translated in another language and it becomes the favorite show. And then you really wonder, like, how somebody like that could have so many demons going on. His addictions have been documented through his memoir as well. Struggling already early on while he was in Friends, right? And if there's a takeaway here, you just have to not give for granted anything. You would assume that somebody like that, it's at the best, is having the best life you can imagine, right? Young, handsome, talented, wealthy, doing what you love, being on one of the biggest shows on the planet, right? Living in LA and whatnot. Yet you take all of that and it's channeled into this darkness of his addictions that he had to battle. And then when it's seems like after, in his 50s, he's trying to get a grip on that, and he's away from the things, the bad things, maybe the coke and the booze and all those are heavy drugs and whatnot. But then still, you need the use of all those compounds, all those other, let's say, allowed medications to contain, to moderate, or to make sure that you don't have outbursts of or falling back into, right? So I don't know how quickly in the US they're able to prescribe, any normal person or celebrity this type of stuff. I read that ketamine is used also now in different shape or forms also for heavy depression, but it's still used as a drug for recreational purpose, right? And I assume, if I read correctly, there is hallucinogenic properties to it, so it's worked in a certain way for medical use, trying to avoid, of course, higher dosages. So you really wonder, like, how easy that is to give somebody this type of medication to contain pain or to numb pain, instead of also trying maybe alternatives. Maybe working out more. I don't know, cold showers. I'm not saying, because I've suffered on and off of things myself. Not to that degree, obviously. Some days are better, some days are worse, especially in the last 3 years. But I don't suffer from addictions, likely, and I never have. I actually got cleaned very early on in life. In my 20s, I stopped drinking. And I still don't drink. I use drugs. So I have a sweet tooth, though. So I should, sometimes I have to take care of that. But yeah, everybody has their own demons, and I look back at the story of this man as another tragic story of somebody that seemed to have everything, and still there is so much complexity to their existence that we cannot fully appreciate or understand. And if anything, you always look upon those stories with both curiosity and sadness and hope that something can be done from learning from people's conditions, what they went through. What was their story for real, and what have they learned to that point? And what can we learn as people to try to help both ourselves and others to not make the mistake, right? To go on a certain route, perhaps in this case of Matthew, of self-medication. Or maybe also the self-medicating was a little bit too much. Maybe he was not supposed to take the ketamine that day, because I also read that he was on a therapy, and the coroner said that that amount of ketamine was not supposed to be in his blood from the previous session, whatever he was doing the week before. So by the time, a week after, he shouldn't have had that amount of ketamine in his blood. So you start to wonder how quickly somebody can just relapse with something, right? Doesn't have to be cocaine, but then this thing that gives you some whatever, relaxations or whatever, and then you start to relapse on that as well. So it's such a nightmarish type of life, and you start also to wonder whether or not those people subconsciously, to a degree, they perhaps put themselves in a circumstance of allowing a fatality to happen so that they can accidentally get rid of their own pain. I know that sounds really bad, but I look at those things sometimes and I wonder if there is some of that taking place, right? Of that kind of carelessness that allows for an accident like that to happen, because maybe subconsciously the pain was too much to deal with, and you don't do it forcefully, like, leaping off of a bridge, but you do it like this. So anyway, just some thoughts. Again, rest in peace, Matthew Perry, and I wish that we could just do more for people, you know? I wish I knew I'd also share more for not only myself, but also people around me, the people that I love. And I wish we could just do more to help so that unnecessary death can be avoided, right? And people can enjoy one another. I mean, I always think like so many people he left that are gonna miss him, you know? Like for everybody that loses somebody to like that, right? In that way, either to suicide or whatnot. You leave so many people probably missing you, and perhaps can be avoided. Anyway, I don't know. I'm just sharing some thoughts here. And I'm gonna do sometimes more of this. Doesn't matter if it gets 50 views or 100 views. You know, I'm getting a little bit also burned out about doing always the same stuff. So, yeah, if you enjoy my sort of flow of thinking, I will continue to do it on other subjects as well. And I want to wish you a good Saturday. Take care of yourself as much as you can because you're loved. And yeah, I have to remind that myself too. To myself. Ciao.